Good morning and welcome to On the Record with Buddy Cianci. My guest this morning is a person who should be no stranger to you if you follow politics. His name is Brian Newberry. He is a state representative, but more importantly, he's the leader of the opposition, the friendly opposition, I should say. He's the Republican, and he's the minority leader of the House of Representatives in Rhode Island. And he represents District 48, which is North Smithfield, Boroughville. He's been there, I think, is his 8th year. He's a practicing attorney. I wanted to find out. Last week we had Nick Mattiello, the Speaker of the House, on, and now we'll get the other side of the coin. Maybe it isn't the other side of the coin. Maybe he agrees with a lot of what the Speaker's doing, or the House is, his opposition to the House is doing. But right now we want to welcome Brian Newberry. Thanks for being on today, and Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you too, buddy, and congratulations on the big news.
Thank you very much.
The paper the other day.
Yeah, that's right. All right. The session has started. All the great, pomp and circumstances over the first day. This is the first week. You'll be going into your second week starting tomorrow. What do you expect the legislative process to be like this year? There's a lot of interesting issues coming up. Tolls, highways, bridges, how we're going to fund that. Marijuana is another issue. Gambling, whether we're going to have gambling in Tiverton. I have a pet question I want to ask you about pensions, which are not performing, the state pensions. But how do you see this legislative session stacking up?
Well, we can talk about tolls for probably the whole show, and I'm sure we will. I would say it's besides the tolls issue. Yeah. I don't think you're going to see a lot of controversial issues this session. That's not to say there aren't things we shouldn't do.
Driver's licenses for illegal
I don't think
immigrants?
there's a lot of support for that in the House. I know the governor made that promise. Yeah. I think she does need legislative approval. I don't think the support is there. Well, but it's an election year, and for good or worse, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but in election year things tend to be quieter. I think the toll issue is going to be the big issue this year.
The toll issue and how to fund it. Well, the governor, from the beginning, and I've always said this, I thought that the governor has not handled this in a very professional way. I think that she got off to a start 8-9 months ago when they had the big 6-10 connector press conference. Everybody's out there kumbaya, and Nick Mattiello was the only adult in the room, it appeared. He put the brakes on it, and as a result, we don't have the tolls, which is good. Because we didn't have, because we didn't know what we were doing. If you had in a perfect world, what would you vote for? What do you want to see happen with the tolls?
Well,
or the highway repairs, not the tolls.
Yeah, I want to be very clear on this. As the leader of the House Republicans, I want to be very clear on our position as a group, and also what I personally think, which is more or less in line with the thinking. I think there's a general consensus, and I will give the governor credit on this. There's a general consensus in the state that's been built, bipartisan, that we need to do something about our bridges. Frankly, this is something that's been brewing for years, should have been brought up years ago. Past governors, both parties, didn't do it. She's brought it to the forefront. I think we all agree we need to do something. It's becoming a serious problem. That said, the question is, how do you pay for bridge repair? Now, the labor unions, of course, want us to do something because it'll bring jobs. I think that's important.
And it's good for the state also.
It's good for the state, and frankly, I'm concerned we're going to have a real safety issue or catastrophe down the road if we don't
No one
act.
disagrees with any of that.
Exactly. That's my point. But I want to be clear about that. Even the Republicans, we don't disagree with that either.
Okay.
However, how do you pay for that? We put out a proposal last June in response to the governor's original proposal that said we should pay as you go, take the money from other parts of the budget. We were roundly criticized by the Democrats because they don't want to take the money from other parts of the budget. That's one issue. Then there's the issue of tolls itself. I want to be very clear. I do not believe we need a new toll program in Rhode Island because I think we can find the money elsewhere. But if we did have a toll program, the logical solution, I realize I'm from the northwest corner of the state, so I know it's easy for me to say, but the logical solution would be to do what every state up and down the East Coast does, except Connecticut, and put a single toll booth in Hopkinton on the Connecticut-Rhode Island border. We can't do that.
And toll who?
And toll everybody.
Trucks or cars?
No, toll everybody.
Cars included.
Just like every state from Maine to North Carolina except Rhode Island.
Cars.
Mind you.
Okay.
I don't think we need to do tolls at all. The truck toll, and we can't do that because of federal law. Right. That would require the governor to request our congressional delegation, all Democrats, by the way, to get an exemption. They tried 4 years ago before the whole Sakana fiasco, and they failed. So I understand the difficulties there. All of that said, the truck toll proposal, to me, is insanity. Okay? The idea that we're going to target one sector of the economy that could bypass the state makes no sense to me at all. I understand trucks cause a lot of the damage to state roads. They're not the only source of problems. The freeze-frost cycle we have in
But
around
she only
weather.
wants to tax. She only wants to toll one class of trucks.
Yeah, I understand that. But here's the thing. She wants to put toll booths, what, 14, 15
well,
locations?
the gantries. Yeah.
The gantries. And
14 of them is the recent one that came out. 14 for these 18-wheelers that are.
And that's a moving target, by the way. It keeps changing.
Yeah.
I don't want to bore the listeners with details of the North Smithfield geography, but I can tell you the one toll booth closest to where I live that's been identified on Greenville Road, on 146 on Greenville Road. I can think of multiple ways truckers could bypass that. You know, the diversion problem you have with tolls. I just don't think this proposal's been thought through very well. In fact, when they came out with the list 2 days ago, after months of pressure from the Speaker, I give Speaker Mattiello credit for this, pressuring them to identify the toll locations, they finally identified the toll locations on a list, and they got the name of the road in my hometown wrong.
The one where the toll gantry is supposed to be, they spelled it wrong, or they got the name of the
street?
street?
No, they got the name of the street wrong. They identified the name of the street as Farnham Pike. Farnham Pike is in Smithfield. This is in North Smithfield. It seems like a minor point. I bring it up because it says to you how much time and attention and detail to the details have they given on this.
Well, when
I just don't think it's well thought through.
Okay, and now there's another policy group that's come up with something called PPP that a Democrat's going to introduce for them, by the way. And the Center for Prosperity and Freedom, and Mr. Stenhouse was on my radio show this week, and this PPP means private partnership, and private partnership will go to one company to do it in Pennsylvania, and one company, you'll bid on it, they'll maintain the roads, they'll fix these bridges, and it'll be for one price, and there can't be any overruns. And it wouldn't be, you know, how do you feel about that? Are you familiar with that proposal?
I'm not familiar with the details of it. I mean, conceptually, I understand what you're saying. I don't know the details of that. At least it's another alternative we need to look at. One of the concerns I have is I feel like the governor's office is trying to railroad this through. You know, introducing a proposal, $1 billion-something proposal, 2 weeks before.
$1.1 billion.
Right, 2 weeks before the session ends.
And one of the drawbacks is that, especially to Republicans, I would think, to spend $600 million on as interest is just absurd. What do you think about the proposal that says, you know, if we go to a general obligation bond, we have to have the voters vote for it, but at least they'll vote for it, and the interest rate that you'd have to pay for a general obligation bond is far less than what you have to pay for a revenue bond if you just took the and took the tolls and paid for revenue bond. You can still do a general obligation bond and have the tolls dedicated to the general obligation bond. You don't have to have it for a separate bond issue, which costs hundreds of millions of dollars more to do it with a revenue bond.
You actually raised a related issue too, and I don't know how much talk has been given on this. My understanding is even this truck toll proposal, there's some questions about its legality. Okay, now I'm not here to resolve those. I'm not an expert in federal highway law, but I will tell you this. I have no doubt in my mind that if we pass this truck toll plan, somebody, the Trucking Association, somebody's going to file a suit to try to block it. Now, they may win, they may lose, but that's going to tie things up for a couple of years. What happens if we bond this out, revenue bond, but then we're blocked from instituting the revenue source? Who's on the hook for the bond payments in the interim? Has anybody addressed that issue?
Not that I've heard of.
I know the governor said that the taxpayers won't be on the hook for this. However, I don't think she can really promise that.
There's also the question of whether or not you can, if you just repair a bridge, there's a question of whether or not you can toll it. You must replace a bridge, get Federal Highway to approve it, and then you may be able to put a gantry up if you totally replace a bridge. That's what I've heard. That's one of the complaints also.
I heard you raise that issue on your radio show. I didn't hear the whole discussion. I can't answer that question.
Well, that's something we've got to look into.
But it's a legal issue, and that's the whole point. If this thing gets tied up in court, what's going to happen in the interim? Either nothing's going to happen, no repairs, or it'll be tied up in court while we're paying bond debt. And I don't think this thing's been thought through. That's my
the whole thing has been mishandled from the beginning. It's been now it'll be going on a year when they had the press conference in a couple of months, and we're no closer to fixing roads or deciding how we're going to fund them. And another issue, and I don't want to belabor tolls here because we have a lot of stuff to go through, but the Department of Transportation, you know, give them all the credit in the world. They do a good job in many ways, but are they capable, especially with the last revelations in that department, to handle this kind of a 453 bridges to be repaired, $1.1 billion? Are they capable of doing it?
It's not just right out. Let me put it this way. As you know from my private career, I'm actually fairly familiar with the construction industry in general. We have some top-notch design firms in this state, and we have some good contractors in this state. I don't think we have enough good or at all, good or bad, design firms and contractors to handle all this work at once. This is being sold as we must bond this off and get everybody to work at once. I'd find it very ironic if in order to put Rhode Islanders back to work, we ended up having to import workers from out of state
Yeah.
to do the work, to get it all done at once, and those folks end up leaving.
That often happens. Okay, so the jury's out. You will not vote for tolls, am I correct?
I will not be voting for tolls. There's no question
Anyway,
about that.
any part?
No.
No way?
No.
Okay. All right, and is that the position of the Republicans?
Yes, it is.
Okay, no tolls. And you want to do a pay-as-you-go or whatever?
We would like to do pay-as-you-go, and even if we did tolls, this is not the way to do it.
All right. Let's go on to kind of a lightning round here. Marijuana legalization. Someone called my radio show and said, you know, we could get $60 million in revenue from marijuana, add 10 cents to the 2% to the gas, or 2 cents to the gas tax for everybody, and 10 cents on diesel fuel, and you got enough money there to do roads and bridges and everything else.
It's a funny thing.
Should we legalize it?
I've been the lead co-sponsor on the marijuana legalization bill for, I believe, 5 years in a row now, which always surprises people when they hear that. They forget that the National Review and William F. Buckley back in the 90s advocated for legalizing marijuana, not because I think marijuana is a good thing, but because I think the drug war is overblown. I think marijuana is not as dangerous as other drugs. I don't think it's any more dangerous than alcohol or cigarettes. I think we are locking up a lot of people in prison and spending a lot of police resources and law enforcement resources unnecessarily. The answer to your question is yes, for all those reasons, plus Massachusetts is probably going to put it on a referendum next year. And if they legalize it, we're going to lose any opportunity to capitalize on the business advantages. So for all those reasons, yes, we should. Yes.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing coming from the minority leader or the Republican.
I've been saying that for years, but I guess
no one's
nobody knows. I don't know.
How do your colleagues feel?
They're split on that. You know, that's some of them agree with me, some of them don't.
Okay, all right. So you don't find any objection at all. You think from a revenue standpoint also it's going to be in your equation, correct?
Honestly, I think it's inevitable. I think we should be ahead of the curve, and for the reasons I said, I think we should have done it years ago.
Let's go into gambling. Should be an easy. We've only got a few seconds left for this segment. Tiverton wants to propose a casino. The town council wants it. They're voting it. Shouldn't be any problem putting it on the ballot, should it?
My understanding is the people at Tiverton, including their elected officials, want it. Yeah. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But my understanding is they want it. I have no objection to it. So,
all right. So you'd be voting to put that on the ballot for next November. Okay, that's another one. The other thing I want to talk about, besides gambling, we've hit marijuana. Let's talk about illegal, undocumented, to be politically correct, undocumented residents of the state of Rhode Island. 12 other states do it. They give driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. What is your opinion on that?
I don't support doing that. But I will say this, though. I think the issue of illegal immigration as a whole, and I don't like the term undocumented, I prefer the term illegal immigration because that's an accurate term, is an issue that passions run high on both sides. And I think when you talk to your average citizen about it, when you really have a conversation about it, you find there's a lot more common ground than people think. I think that the activists, and I say on both sides, the other day at the State House we had the pro-illegal alien illegal alien driver's license people come to the State House. They had a rally. They were banging on the doors. That doesn't impress anybody. On the other hand, you get the anti-immigration people. They sound like nativists. They sound very poorly. I think when you have conversations with people on both sides of the issue who are well-meaning, you realize this is a complex issue.
Well, what about safety? What about safety? They say, well, you know, at least they'll be trained. They'll have taken a test. We'll know that they're legal, not legal, but we'll know that they at least have the skills to drive an automobile. They can be certified to do so. Plus the fact that they most likely have a better chance of getting an insured motor vehicle with a license than without a license. I mean, so what do you think about all that?
Well, no, you raise the issue. It's like the issue about in-state tuition. For what do you do with someone who is brought here at the age of 2? They're not legal, but they've grown up here and it's their whole life. Do you punish them for that? No, you do not. On the other hand, you cannot have laws that encourage law breaking. That's why I say it's a difficult question. I think there's got to be some other way found to deal with the safety issues. I also don't think we can reward law breaking. That just sends the wrong signal.
Well, that makes sense, but what other way can there be? Either give them a license or you don't.
Well, I would not, but I would like to find some other solution to it. And tell you, it's a complex issue.
What is another solution? Give them bus passes?
I don't have one off the top of my head. I will tell you that right now.
All right. All right. We'll be back with Brian Newberry, who is the minority leader of the House of Representatives here in the state of Rhode Island. And we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back and talk about some other issues. I want to find out who he's supporting for president. Welcome back to On the Record with Buddy Cianci. My guest this morning, Brian Newberry, minority leader of the House of Representatives. A lot of stuff to talk about. Governor's Raimono's first year in office. I'm not going to ask you to give her a grade, There are a lot of things that she did that were good, a lot of things that a lot of people don't agree with, such as the real estate tax that was imposed and a few other things. However, in her attempt to put tax on real estate for second homes and all that, tell me, what kind of grade do you give her? Not kind of grade, but how do you assess her first year in office?
Well, it's fine. I'm glad you didn't ask me to give a letter grade because I always hate that. All right. I've been asked this question a lot because it's the beginning of a new year and she's first year in office. I would put it this way. I respect the governor and I give her credit for, I believe, focusing on the right issues. And that sounds not important, but it is. Our last governor didn't focus on the right issues ever.
There was always Christmas trees, holiday trees.
There's always some distraction, the death penalty, whatever. Governor Raimondo, I will give her credit. She gets it. She understands that the economy of the state of Rhode Island is not as good as it should be, not as good as it could be. Whether or not her proposed courses of action and her solutions will pan out, only time's going to tell on that. I mean, one of the things that I've said this before, within the broad span of American acceptable political discourse, there are generally three philosophies when it comes to economics. There's this sort of progressive liberal socialist philosophy, which I completely reject. There's a libertarian
Keynesian economics.
Yeah, you can call it that. I think Keynes gets a bad reputation. I don't think he would actually agree with that. But there's a more libertarian free market theory, which I generally subscribe to. And then there's this sort of third way, not to mean it's the best way because it's in the middle. It's the sort of government should intervene in the economy, sort of pick winners and losers, tax credits and all that kind of stuff. When that works, it works. Fidelity, for example, up in my area was brought in years ago.
38 Studios doesn't.
But when it doesn't work, it doesn't. What happens is the people
picking winners and losers.
Right, exactly. And the people who tend to be behind that kind of philosophy may be well-meaning, but they tend to think they're the smartest guys in the room, and they won't make the mistakes their predecessors made. Under Governor Carcieri, we had Deepwater Wind, we had 38 Studios and some other things. Governor Raimondo has asked for tools, which I voted for the budget as a whole, but I did vote on the record of my objection to the tools that we gave her at the Commerce Corporation to try to do the same kinds of things. We'll see how it turns out. I hope it turns out well. I want it to succeed.
But you didn't vote for those articles.
I did not. I voted for the budget. They were included within it. Yeah. I get that. But I wanted to at least register my moral objection to those articles because I don't believe that's the way to go. But I do believe it's better than her predecessor's approach.
Mr. Chafee.
Yes.
Okay. Too bad he's not in the presidential run right now.
It was more entertaining with him there, yes.
I understand that. All right, let's talk. I want to talk about something else. One of the big problems last year was approving the pension settlement that was negotiated and mediated, and I guess everyone voted for it, or most people voted for it. You didn't vote, but the overwhelming majority of the House did, right? And it really and truly took a toll. Not to use the word again, but took a toll on workers, future workers, and also the governor said at the time that the problem has been solved, almost like Neville Chamberlain, you know, peace at hand. And now we found out that the pension system only generated this year so far about 0.88%. Last year, only 2.2%. There's an actuarial assumption that the pension would deliver 7.5%. And the pension was worth $8.1 or $2 billion this time last year. Now it's worth $7.5 billion. We've lost $500 million or so, $400 to $500 million. And we're not reaching these actuarial assumptions, and the unfunded liability is starting to rise. Now, you know, there's only a couple of places you can go to get money to the worker, and that's out now because they've already made their settlement. You can go to the corpus of the trust of all that $7.5 billion to see what it earns, and it's not earning. And we find that we're heavily invested in hedge funds paying $80, $90 million out in fees a year and not earning the money, so it's the taxpayer. And you're going to have to pay more money into the system than we anticipated before. Do you think that the investments that are made, and you know the hedge funds, there's been tremendous, the governor gets a lot of her contributions from the financial industry. Here we have hedge funds which won't give us any information. A company called Clarin, was a company that is a Carlyle company, Carlyle Group. She gave him $50 million. It's worth $42 million now. They can't give us the $42 million, but yet the executives of Clarin got their money out, and I think the fees were 5.5%. Quote, don't check me if I'm wrong, but right around there. And we've lost $8 million, $9 million. Our stake is only worth $42 million. Don't you? That's just one example. There are many, many others. Do you think it's very important for the legislature to get involved in an oversight of how we invest the money, or look into how we invest it and what can be changed to make sure, because that's going to be another thing that raises its ugly head. It's going to be right back in the legislator's lap.
That might be the longest question I ever got asked.
It's a statement and a question. I want to get you on record.
No, I'm happy to talk about it. It was funny, we were talking off air about a book I'm actually in the middle of reading now called Too Big to Fail, about the roots of the financial crisis of the last decade. Hedge funds are a very interesting thing. You know, if you're a private investor and you want to invest in a hedge fund, go ahead. I'm not sure why public pensions are investing themselves in hedge funds. The fees they charge, the upside is obviously very high. The downside is also very low, and I don't think public pensions should be investing in those types of things. You raise the issue about the investment return. To be fair, the investment return, I think it says 7.5% now.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be. Now, granted, it's supposed to look at it over the long haul. Will it be 7.5% over the next 15 years? But what matters is on a year-to-year basis, what we have to do as a legislature to put money in. I would like to see our legislature, in general, have better oversight and control over the public pension system. I agree, as a legislator, it's easy for me to say that. I know the public doesn't always have confidence in the legislature when it does things, but we are the people closest to the people who vote. Our districts are small. I have to go back and talk to my neighbors, state employees, retirees, other taxpayers, et cetera. I think that we should have more oversight over it. I'm really concerned that what happened in 2011, which I voted for and supported at the time and I think was the right thing to do, I was concerned at the time did not go far enough. Again, it's only 4 years out and you have to look at these things over a longer window, but things are not trending well. If they continue to trend poorly, I'm worried about what's going to happen in the future. And I'm really worried about our retirees and our current public employees, which I think shows the wisdom of trying to convert, which the governor's, now then treasurer, now governor's plan did try to convert into more of a private sector 401k plan. I'd like to see us try to transition more over time into that type of plan. But it's a big issue. There's no doubt about it. But you can't look at it on a one-year basis either.
Yeah, no, I'm not. But you know, when you look at how much money we've lost, $500 million, and you look at the volatility, and you look at where we're invested, it doesn't seem that, you know, in this week the market went down. Who knows? I said the pensions was worth at 7 point.
It's the fees. That
$90 million, $80 million a year. Caprio, when he was general treasurer, was paying, I think, 13 million, 12, 13 million, which is a reasonable number. But when you go up to 90 million, and then you're getting a lot of your political support from Wall Street, you know, and financial support, that raises a question.
No, it raises a very good question. That's exactly the point. Look, I'm not an investment professional, but I do know that in general, index funds do very well. The fees that our pension fund has been paying, to me, not an expert in the area, but to me, are excessive. And you have to question the wisdom of those choices. And at this point, you can criticize the current governor or former treasurer for that, but she's out of that office. That's up to the current treasurer and what's he going to do about it.
And it's up to the legislature to oversee, because they're going to be right back in your chamber looking for help, because the unfunded liability is starting to climb again. And there's no question about that. And that's not good. It's not fair to the pensioner nor the taxpayer. You know, the pensioner already took their hit. All right, let's move on with an upward. What do you think the other big issues are? You got gambling. You've got gambling. You've got marijuana. You've got the tolls and highways. I mean, you've got driver's licenses, pensions. We talked about. What else should be looked at the legislature?
Here's the interesting question: how do you or any citizen define what's a big issue? See, from my point of view, if you remember last year, we actually passed a budget unanimously in the House for the first time in many years. And the reason we did that, and the reason Republicans supported that budget...
Because many people question, say, where are the Republicans challenging this?
Well, because last year, the reason we supported it was, for the first time, at least in my tenure, there were things in that budget, I mean, significant things in that budget that we had pushed for that were a start. If I were Speaker, I would build on that. I would add more things into this year's budget to move the ball. I would start looking more into further cuts in Medicaid, which we enacted last year. Further tax cuts for the business community. For example, we cut the sales tax on energy. That was a big boost for the business community. We cut the Social Security tax. I'd like to see us build on that. I don't know, and from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, I don't think that the leadership of the Democrats, who ultimately drives the bus here, is going to do that this year. Time will tell. So when you ask what are the big issues, if I were Speaker, those are the issues I would make big issues. But to answer your question, what do I think is going to happen? I think beyond this whole toll plan, we'll see how that goes. I don't think we're going to see major issues this year. I'm not saying
why, because it's an election year?
It's an election year. And you know what? I've been there long enough to know that election years, for better or for worse, are quieter. The big issues, pension reform is a good example, take place in the odd-numbered years.
Did you vote for 38 studios, the appropriation for 38 studios?
I was unfortunately, the appropriation?
Yeah.
No, I did not.
You didn't vote for it?
No.
That'll be on the agenda again
I didn't
this
vote
year.
for.
I'm sure.
To be fair, it was included in last year's. This year's appropriation was included. Let me be clear. When we first went through that storm in 2013, I was an outspoken critic of it. I voted against it. Same in 2014. We reached a tipping point by 2015, even though I think it was a mistake in the past to vote for it. To me, it was a fiscal matter. Right. Once we paid enough into it, the hit to the state of not paying it from a financial standpoint was too much. So at this point, that ship has sailed.
We're going to be playing the $80 million we own.
Exactly. So I want to be clear on what.
Let's get into education. You think that'll be a part, the education formula? They appointed this committee, and it's going to come back to the legislature, the governor.
The committee. There were no Republicans.
No Republicans on. Yeah.
You know, it's funny. They came out with their. I believe they were supposed to come out with their report a few days ago. I haven't seen it yet. It may be out there. I haven't had time. I mean, it's
all right.
January.
I've only got 30 seconds, but I want to ask you. I got to get into national politics. You're an influential Republican leader here. There's a lot of. I don't think there's any question that Hillary Clinton is going to win the Democratic nomination of the votes from Rhode Island. She beat Obama here, for God's sakes. Let's talk Republican. That's where all the action is right now. Who does the minority leader of the Republican House and an influential Republican support for President of the United States? And don't tell me you don't support anybody, because I know you have to.
At the end of the day, I believe there's still like 10, 12 candidates. Yeah. I believe we're going to come down to a final three of Trump, Cruz, and Rubio. Mm-hmm. Trump will not be the nominee. It's going to be either Cruz or Rubio. I like them both. I think Rubio has a better chance against Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders or any other Democrat in November. But I like both Cruz and Rubio. Okay, but you
prefer Rubio.
I'm going to vote for the Republican candidate I think has the best chance to win.
When you go in the primary, who are you going to vote for?
Rubio.
Rubio. Okay, so we finally got an answer.
There you go. Yeah.
They finally got it out of you. All right, the House Minority Leader, Brian Newberry. Thanks for being with us. Good luck with this session. Come back and we'll see how much you guys really accomplished this year. But your own words, probably not a lot. Just the tolls, maybe. Okay. All right. Stay tuned to Channel 6 for more great programming, and on your Southeastern New England affiliate for ABC, Channel 6. Have a great afternoon.